Shabbat Shalom FJC. This week we're reading Parshat Devarim, beginning the book of Deuteronomy. And as you may or may not know, part of my job at Trua is running a summer fellowship of rabbinical students. And I want to share with you today two insights that came to me recently from the program. The first is from one of my students. Alan Lipson is his name. He just finished his first year of rabbinical school. And he was saying that Parshat Devarim is one of the saddest parshiot of the Torah for him, because it contains this line at the end of chapter 1 or the beginning of chapter 2 about the Israelites having to turn back and go back into the desert after being so close to the land of Israel and be stuck there, Yamim Rabim, for a long time. And he was saying to him that resonates very much with life as we know it in this moment, of being stuck, of not knowing where the way forward is, of not knowing which way to go. The sort of counterbalance to that came from a session that we had a chance to study with Carolyn Klassen, who happens to be the president of Kolot Chayenu, just up the road from our Brooklyn home, and is also a PhD student at Union Theological Seminary. And I asked her to teach about the book of Isaiah because it was pointed out to me for the first time actually by Salem Pierce, who you may remember was part of our community for a year or two before she moved on to Washington Heights. That all the Haftarot in Deuteronomy, the whole book, are from Isaiah. The Tlata de Poranuta, the three Haftarot of scolding that lead up to Tisha B'Av, and then the seven Haftarot of consolation that lead us into the end of the year. So the book of Isaiah is not one that I know very well, but Carolyn gave us the basic scholarly consensus, which is that it's broken into three parts, written by three different prophets over the course of decades. So the first Isaiah takes place before the destruction of Jerusalem and the exile of the Israelites, and is all about both knowing that a disaster is coming and that the only way through the disaster is to suffer it and to come out the other side better than you were. The second Isaiah is written in exile in Babylonia, and is about the hope for restoration, and also sort of brings with it how do we survive this crushing trauma that our people has experienced. And then the third part of Isaiah was written after they've been allowed to return and to start rebuilding the temple. And so all their dreams were supposed to be realized now that they're back in the land of Israel. And it turns out that they're not, that life is more complicated, that building the perfect society they dreamed of in exile suddenly seems not quite so simple. And so as I think about that tripartite division of the book, it's hard to say relative to any given news item or crisis where we are as a society. Are we facing impending doom? Are we in the middle of or immediately post-trauma trying to rebuild ourselves? Or are we already partway into the rebuilding and kind of feeling disillusioned? I actually think we're all three of them, depending on which crisis you happen to think of. And the tension between that and Alan's insight about being stuck is that we're trying to find that way forward. So my hope as the shul starts to reopen, as we start to be able to have some services in person, as we look towards high holidays, and we look towards finishing the book of Deuteronomy and starting Bereshit all over again, is that we take those lessons of how do you respond to, come back from trauma, from destruction, how do you move through it in a productive way, and how do you get unstuck so that it no longer feels like you can't move, where there actually is a way forward. Shabbat Shalom.